Hunt couplings. Could they be the answer to my freight nightmare? Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie. Now, in the last video I looked at building freight trains, and there were lots of comments in there saying, you know, perhaps you were mistaken on this front or whatever. Thank you for those comments, and I will address all those comments in the spring update because there really were some interesting comments from guards, people who work trains, train drivers, so experts in that field, and I do appreciate those comments. Anyway, this is probably the 5th video that I've done on couplings, and I've never addressed magnetic couplings before. Why? Because they were sort of new to the game then, and I wasn't going to sort of promote something or agree with something or try something that hadn't really stood the test of time. So because of the last video and these appalling dogfish wagons, I thought it would be time to look into magnetic couplings to see if that's got an answer that will fulfill my need in something that sticks together, is capable of being broken up, and will shunt with 100% reliability. That's what I'm really after. And as you can see on this clip from last week, as we reverse these dogfish across this point, the couplings snag on the part of the point on the switch rail and derail. It's absolutely shocking. Hopefully when the designer leaves school, he'll be able to come up with a better solution. And even going forwards, you can see, if you look closely, a spark as it goes across the points. Shocking. I'll just wind the clock back to last weekend, because last weekend myself and the other guys, 29 of us, jumped in a coach and went to the Alexandra Palace to the British Railway Modelling exhibition. We went up on the Sunday and it was brilliant. It really was. It seemed quieter, but then it was because the footfall was down. We weren't 10 deep at all the layouts and the trade stands, and in these COVID days that was quite reassuring, let's say. And if you came along and said hello and we had a chat for 10 minutes, or even just a nod in the distance, thank you very much. I do appreciate you taking the time to sort of say hello. Much appreciated. At the show, I obviously go and visit the layouts and things like Copenhagen Fields, which are sort of, you know, marvellous really, but I also go along to the trade stands, and a Cura scale were there, and I must confess, I didn't spend much money at this show, probably about 100 quid on cable and bits and bobs and tools, but I did order a Class 31. A Cura scale seemed to be keeping their prices down, unlike other manufacturers, let's say. And I also popped over to see Richard Brighton from DCC Concepts, and then to Chris Hunt of Hunt Couplings, or now probably better known as West Hill Wagon Works, which is where this video really begins. Now, I tried to ambush Chris, failed miserably to be perfectly honest. I said, Chris, what you really need to produce is a pack of couplings of various lengths, and KD do this, but it's quite expensive, I must admit. Various lengths, so we can take them back home and try them out, because I actually got Hunt couplings on my HST unit, and the first set of couplings I bought were a bit the coaches were too far apart, and the second ones were a bit close together. But when you put a close with the other one, they were the right distance to go up and down the helix, you know, without a problem. So sometimes you have to find the middle ground. Anyway, having tried to ambush Chris, I failed miserably, because he turned around and said, you mean a pack like these, Charlie, which has 3 different lengths. There are 15 couplings, 5 sort of shorts, mediums and 5 long. And here's the details. So here we are at West Hill Wagon Works website, and on the Hunt Couplings starter pack page. So Hunt Couplings up here, Hunt Couplings Elite Starter 15 pairs. And if you scroll down past the 19.95, which is obviously the price, 5 pairs of close couplings, 9.5mm, 5 pairs of intermediates, 11.7, and 5 pairs of standards at 12.5mm, and that's measured from the end of the NEM socket. Quite important, that bit. And I also bought a pack of ultra close couplings. That makes sense, for $14.95, and the distance here is a meagre 7mm. Right, there's my 4 sets of couplings. Let's fit them up and see what they look like. Now with this little 16-ton mineral wagon, I thought I'd just show you how I remove these NEM couplings, and as you can see it has they're little fish tails on the end, sort of lugs, and with this sort of cheap and cheerful set of pliers, nice and narrow, and then all I do is pop these down in this gap and then push them together as I put a bit of pressure to try and pull the coupling out. It's usually quite straightforward, there's no big shakes. Give them a little pinch and then just pull it, and then away it comes. And now you can see the little fishtail ends on it, as it were. And then to replace it with one of these hunt couplings, there isn't an A and B end like they used to be, but they have to be the right way up. If I turn it around the wrong way, it sort of repels. I don't know if you can sort of see that, if that makes any sense, but they're going to be the right way up. And all you need to do now, this is the shiny side, as it were. So if I put the shiny side down and the dull side up, and then I offer this into there, sometimes you need to wet the ends just to give it to ease it in, but let's try it without that, and then just poke it in and it should click, and there it goes. If I take that away, give that a tug, and it's in. So quite a straightforward operation really to switch the couplings around. Now on this wagon, if we tip it on its side, this is the longest coupling, and they said it was 12.5, and if I measure that, actually their measurements are pretty much spot on. Obviously this coupling is unsuitable to this wagon, but if I put this gov on its side, perhaps you can see that here this coupling is around about 4 millimeters from the end of the coupling to the end of the coach, whereas this one is just about 1 millimeter. So you can see that you do need, whoops, stuck to me a screwdriver. So you can see that you do need various couplings for various design of rolling stock. So here we have our wagons all coupled up, so I think it's about time with it we zoomed in and had a little measure to see what the distances are between the buffers. So firstly, starting with obviously the biggest ones first, let's go for these, and these are the 12.5 millimeter couplings, and I believe here that they are, with this scale, 00 scale ruler by the way, they are roughly pretty much 3 foot apart. If we go to the 11.7 couplings, these are about 2'3" apart. Then we go down to the 9.5s, and these are around about 1'6". And then the ultimates, which are these 7 millimeter ones, these are roughly about 6 inches apart. But just for comparison, finally, here's the ordinary Bachmann, drop link couplings, and here we have about 1'9", I think. And of course, if I give the train a shake, the only one that makes the noise, of course, are the Bachmanns. So there we are. Hopefully that makes it a bit more plain to see really on what you're going to get for your money should you decide to opt for these couplings. Of course, with railway modelling it's never always straightforward, and with changing the length of your couplings can cause a couple of problems. The first problem is something known as buffer lock, and that is where your train is going through a set of points and the points are very tight, mainly with set track points, and one buffer will actually go behind another. So as it snakes its way through the points, the buffers overlap, and then as it straightens up, the two buffers pull on each other and you get a derailment. Piece of cake, isn't it? So that's buffer lock, mainly on set track points or very tight point work or very, very short couplings. The second one is more common, and this is buffer clash, and I can show you this. And this is where two buffers come together on the inside of the track, and due to that force there, they then force the other sets of bogies to come off, or the other wheels to come off the track. So let's take a look at that. Now here we have two pieces of track. The first piece here is first radius curve, and this piece here where the wagons are is second radius curve. And the two buffers on these wagons, which are the 7mm ultra close couplings, there's pressure between these already, and if I just wiggle these around, then this will derail straight away. And if I try to run it onto this first radius curve again, it derails straight away because of the pressure on these buffers. Now if I change that front wagon and put the next one on the back, which is the 9.5mm, there is no buffer clash now, and they will both run around quite happily a second or a first radius curve. So it's a case of picking the right coupling to go with a particular piece of rolling stock, knowing the severity of your curves. So switching to a different type of rolling stock, let's have a look at the new Pilchard wagons from Oxford Rail. And if we zoom into their buffers, we can see that there is a substantial distance between those. And if we measure them, I think we're going to come up with, yep, around about 3 feet. So let's see what we can do with those. So it looks like we've gone from 3 foot down to 1'6". Now getting back to my issue, which it all stems from these little Helgian dogfish wagons, it's fairly obvious really that the couplings produced by Helgian that don't work are better made than the ones from Hunt Couplings that do. The better ones don't work. But the tolerances are finer, as you can see here. But that's not quite the end of the story, because these replacements from Hunt Couplings don't actually fit the tolerance, the internal dimensions of the Helgian pocket. So it's no big shakes, because it's just a little bit of fettling, and as railway modelers, it's kind of what we do all the time, isn't it? So what do we actually need to do? Well, using this vernier caliper, if we measure the dimensions of these legs once squeezed together, it comes in at 2.2 or 2.3 millimeters. And if I do the same with the Hunt coupling version, this one comes in at 3.1. So this is basically, it's almost a millimeter wider than the original Helgian one. So how are we going to get around that? Well, it's quite simple really. Margaret's gone to work, and so I've got hold of a nail file, and all I'm going to do is now remove just about a millimeter from the inside faces of the coupling. So by simply taking the file in between the legs and then just pushing some pressure from the outside, we take some of the material off. And there we see. The main material is obviously this piece just here, is where I'm going to put more kind of effort into it. And you can see now the gap is widening. And if I put the vernier back on and see if we're making any progress. Yeah, we're down to 2.4 coming along. Right, so that's 2.2, let's say. We'll give that a go and see if it fits. So that is my rake of 10 dogfish complete. But it's also noteworthy to say that the shark on the back end, which is made by Hornby, the coupling going into that one also needed a little bit of work. But that's not quite the end of the story, because last week Margaret and I popped down to Devon and we popped into a antique shop called Green Dragon, I think it's Seaview Curios, and the guy who owns it, a gentleman named Steve, is an N-gauge railway modeller, and he has a cabinet of model railway bits and bobs, and in that cabinet were some Bachmann Sea Lion ballast hoppers, and I thought, this is kind of Christmas come early really, and they will fit immensely well into my ballast train of the Helgian dogfish. So now I need to see if the couplings from Hunt will now fit these wagons as well. So here we have one of my Sea Lion hoppers on a piece of 3rd radius curved track, and hopefully you can see there's buffer clash here and the magnets aren't actually touching, and that's because they've both got the ultra close couplings, which is obviously unsuitable for the Sea Lion. However, on the other end you can see that we have some tolerance on the buffers, and what we have now is we've got the close coupling, the ultra close coupling fitted to the hopper as usual, but on the Sea Lion I've gone for the 9.5mm length coupling that was in the mixture of length starter pack, and all seems well. So I shall whip this one off and then fit the 9.5s on both ends of both hoppers. Well, that's the Class 22 tucked up in the fiddle yard, so let's bring her up and see if we have any issues. Please remember that these Helgian hoppers have absolutely filthy wheels, and that will be the subject of a future video. Which is on speed 60 now, so I think we need a bit more power. And now you can really hear the noise of those filthy dogfish wheels. Well, reasonably successful, nothing broke away. It's a win-win really, isn't it? Now, watching back that last piece of footage, you may have seen two of these wagons derail on this point back here. And it's nothing to do with the couplings really, it's to do with the filthy wheels, and to be perfectly honest, I haven't yet checked the back-to-backs. So, oh, and they are very light, so these need to have some weight added, which I'll do when I get around to putting the ballast in them and obviously weathering them up. One other point is watching them go down the helix before that run up. I couldn't help but notice that the gap between the loco and the first hopper wagon was very tight, and to that end I'm going to change the, what was it, the 9.5 coupling for an 11.7 until I get around to sorting a coupling mechanism such as KD on just these first wagons. As you've noticed, in the meantime, I've now reversed the shark and the loco, and we're going to send it down the down line, as it were, which is the centre track on the helix, which is the third radius curve. So we'll crack on with that and see what that looks like and see if we have any issues. So we shall set her off at speed 60. And this time, of course, she's on the inside track, which is radius 3. Nope, something's wrong. Ugh. Well, I need to sort these wheels out. So what caused all the problems over the points? Well, it's a couple of things really. It's the weight of those wagons, because they are so light and flimsy. The wheels are completely filthy, and finally the back-to-backs might be out. Now I haven't checked the back-to-backs because my back-to-back gauge is 14.6 and I'm after a 14.5. The higher the number, the more fine scale they're leaning towards, and actually this my 00 wheels are somewhat more agricultural, let's say, and I'm after a new back-to-back gauge, which I'm sure will be in the post shortly. What about the Hunt couplings then? Well, on the website there are hundreds of different varieties, and I've just given you a taste of ones that I discussed with Chris Hunt at the show, and to be perfectly honest, they work absolutely fine. There's a little bit of fettling to do with a file, but you know, that's just part of being a railway modeller, really, isn't it? If you want to order some or whatever, there is a link in the description below, but I might add it's not an affiliate link. It will just take you to the Hunt Couplings website and you can do your stuff from there. The reason I mentioned it's not an affiliate link is because sometimes when you click an affiliate link, the person obviously who's doing the review gets a payment for every order that's placed. So just to keep things above board, this isn't an affiliate link. There is nothing in it for me. All I'm trying to do is show you the various options that are around, and the previous 4 videos, there's loads of couplings in there, whether you want to go to KDs or whatever. But it's just a question of honesty is why I haven't driven for an affiliate link, but there we are. I'd like to, and finally, and there's my receipt for when I bought the couplings at the show. And finally, or no, nearly finally, someone came past my place the other day and left 3 code 75 used points in the porch. Thank you very much indeed. Sadly, my layout isn't code 75, it's code 100. But if you don't mind, I will take these down to our Model Railway Club and I'm sure they'll find good use there. But if you could have left a note saying who had left them, it would have helped. But thank you very much indeed. It was a very kind gesture, and hopefully you won't mind if I take them to the club. So there we go, really. That really wraps this one up. The wheel cleaning issue of rolling stock is very fundamental, and that's what's going to be in the next video, and there'll be an eye-opener for you. In the meantime, of course, how you clean your wheels will interest me, and I don't mean just the locos because they're somewhat easier, but the brass wheels that come out of Dapol and Hellion, if you're middle class, or Helgian if you're more like me, they do attract all sorts of gunk onto the running surfaces. So let me know how you get over that issue on your model railway. So there we go. If you'd like to become a patron, there's the button. If you're not a subscriber, there's a button there. And remember, being a subscriber is free. And I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. And in the meantime, a video here and here. Please take care. Thanks a lot. Goodbye.